Alright guys, welcome back to Formula 1 news. Another remarkable day, especially on the Red Bull side, with a major admission effectively being made. They are in a very tricky spot indeed when it comes to understanding what is going wrong with their car and exactly how to fix it with every single gram necessary, it seems, if they want to find themselves in a position to try and hold on to Max Verstappen's Drivers' Championship win this year. But also, Daniel Ricciardo, is it the end for him, not just at the end of the season, but literally after the Singapore Grand Prix? Latest rumours emerging that Lawson will get next year's drive, but it might be sooner than we thought. Very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I'd greatly appreciate it. First of all, a couple of special liveries, and there is more to come on this in a second when we talk about Red Bull, but this is going to be the Mercedes celebrating 50 years of their partnership with Petronas, and well, we can see that it's basically the other livery, but it's got this Petronas blue, I think is what they call it, on the car. Looks kind of nice. I don't know if I prefer it to the other livery, but you know, it's a relatively reasonably well done job, I would say, for the Mercedes, and we usually can see it this part of the season. Teams will bring special liveries to their car. Red Bull were planning to, but not anymore, as we shall discuss over the coming minutes. Visa, Cash App RB also have one because of course, their partnership with Hugo Boss. They're raking in the sponsorship revenue, of course, this season. How about this? It's effectively a denim car design, so the livery looks like a pair of jeans, effectively. It's actually kind of cool. I'm not gonna lie, the renders make it look pretty damn nice. I don't know whether it's going to look this good in person when it actually hits the track, but that is a partnership they're coming up with this weekend, and I don't know, it's interesting, it's pretty unique, not seen anything quite like this before, so that's what they're up to this weekend. And sure, they are struggling, but they can still afford a few extra kilograms to paint the car like this. Red Bull seemingly cannot, as we shall see in a second. So this is another kind of angle of the renders, and kind of like it from this angle, to be fair. We'll see what it looks like under the light. I actually think I prefer this colour blue than I do the main blue they've been running with this season, but you know, we haven't really been seeing much of that car because it's been at the back of the grid. But we're going to talk about the whole Danny Ric situation here in a second. By the way, Mercedes have an upgrade on the way, as do many teams in Austin. Red Bull have talked about a major package on the way for the US Grand Prix. Singapore's this weekend. Then there is 3 weeks off of racing, so effectively summer break version 2, before we then go back to Austin, then Mexico, Brazil, Qatar, Las Vegas, Abu Dhabi. Pretty sure that's the way that it's going to go. So we have 7, of course, rounds remaining in the season. Gianpiero Lambiase, many saw this coming, but the other day there were rumours that not just McLaren but also Ferrari were trying to effectively buy GP and get him out of Red Bull and have him over to their team instead. Maybe with the intention to weaken Red Bull, and understandably right, with Newey, with Wheatley, among others, leaving the team over the last few months and obviously years. We include guys like Dan Fallows and Rob Marshall that have had their way to other teams not called Red Bull any longer. So if there was any other key figure to target, GP would be one of the top guys to get, because it would weaken Red Bull, it would weaken Red Bull's relationship, you'd imagine, with Max if somebody else was to be able to get GP away, and maybe that would help one of those other teams entice Max at some point down the line. But no, he said he wants to stay if Christian Horner can match the offer, I imagine is what he said. And as a result, he has signed a new arrangement with Red Bull and has been promoted as well. So he's going to become the head of racing. He is still Max's race engineer, but as and when Max leaves, which, well, we don't know, but assuming that at some point he does, then presumably GP will no longer be a race engineer. Maybe he'll replace Max's, maybe he'll race engineer Max's replacement, and who knows if Max is going to leave. But obviously, as it stands, it's becoming more and more credible, that prospect, that Max is looking at Mercedes or Max is looking at Aston Martin come 2026. And even he did another interview here where he said, yeah, certainly retiring or imagining myself elsewhere is possible. Once my sports career is over, I'll probably be more relaxed and be able to enjoy a different life, being closer to friends and family, a new time. So it sounds like he's kind of down, right, to retire and enjoy his time with friends and family, whatever, and fair play. But of course, that's sports, and I don't expect Max to put down the wheel anytime soon. But obviously in Formula 1, that's not what he wants to do forever. Max has made it quite clear that he wants to race another series, and he will. The question is when, and whether he goes somewhere else slightly sooner. But speaking of the driver situation at Red Bull, Let's talk Liam Lawson, because Helmut Marko said a while ago now at Singapore, that's when you're going to find out what's going on with Lawson, whether he's part of the plans. The rumour had it as of yesterday that this is a done deal and Liam Lawson is going to be promoted and secure a full-time seat at VCARB in 2025, RB effectively. Now, they've been hinting this for some time. Obviously, Marko literally said it, that yeah, Lawson's getting a drive, and obviously it's not going to be at Red Bull, let's be real. So it's going to be at RB, and he also said, Marko, well, the team now is no longer going to be a sister team. It's going to go back to being more of a junior team to actually help younger drivers come through in the program, which is the intention in the first place. So, you know, it makes sense that the junior team, as it were, of Red Bull should probably be used in that way again, which hasn't really been the case, you could argue, over the last couple of years. And apparently the shareholders want it to be used in that way. So I think it was inevitable, especially given what Behrman and Colapinto, the fact that Doohan's going to be on the grid, potentially among others with like Bortoletto joining as well. Lawson had to get a drive. He did a great job last year in Singapore, actually, let's not forget, where famously he knocked out Max Verstappen and the RB19 in that second part of qualifying, and you know, took obviously a pretty good grid position and result in the, obviously it was the AlphaTauri as it was last year, but Lawson definitely deserved a drive off what he achieved last year, replacing Ricciardo. Let's not forget, Ricciardo came back, he broke his wrist, of course, in Zandvoort. Lawson stepped in, did a great job for a couple of rounds, then he was out of the car, and the question was, is he deserving of a drive? I think his performance was, in addition to the fact that now we've seen what Behrman and Colapinto and the other names that I mentioned have done and are going to be on the grid for next year. So really RB and Red Bull have no choice but to give Lawson a drive, especially because rumour has it this past Sunday was like the deadline in the contract, because they'd obviously got Lawson on another deal, and the rumour was last year that they told him, look Liam, we're going to secure you a drive in 2025, and if we don't, then you're free to walk effectively. And apparently this past Sunday was the day where they had to tell him or not. So the decision is made, and they've informed him that he's going to get a race seat in Formula 1 for next year. The question being really, is he going to get the race seat sooner than that? Because Ralf Schumacher today said to Sky Germany, and maybe not the most reliable source, but I thought nonetheless interesting and worthy of mention, that this is apparently going to be Ricciardo's last race. As in, he's done after Singapore, and Lawson will drive from then on. So there's two possibilities here. Either this isn't true, Ricciardo is simply losing his seat at the end of the season and Lawson's coming in instead, which is plausible. Ricciardo's been okay. Has he been as good as Yuki over the course of the year? You know, he's not been terrible, but Yuki's probably been stronger on average. Just unfortunately for them, the car's fallen off a cliff over the last few rounds, so it's not really been that possible for Ricciardo to show what he's capable of, but it's not like he has dramatically outperformed the car or anything and shown that he's worthy of a drive, especially over a promising rookie. So that's one option. The other option, of course, is what about Perez, right, at Red Bull, because it was a big rumour not that long ago that, well, Ricciardo will get the Red Bull drive alongside Max, Lawson will step into RB, and it's all sunshine and rainbows. So is that a possibility for next season? Sure. Is it a possibility after Singapore? Potentially, but it seems unlikely that decision would already have been made, because there's clearly a good reason why Red Bull are keeping Perez around. Rumour had it that, you know, his backers in Mexico were offering all sorts of cash to keep him around, certainly through the Mexican Grand Prix, and over the last couple of rounds, he's done better with respect to Max. He should have had a podium in, obviously, Baku. That didn't happen, and that is a good track for him historically, and elsewhere he's still expected to struggle more than Max is with the car. But, you know, based on the trajectory of the last couple of rounds, are they going to kick out Perez after Singapore to put Ricciardo in the car? Seems unlikely, especially because the Mexican Grand Prix is still coming up, and I'm sure that they probably want him in the car for that. Ricciardo, of course, part of his benefit has been that he has had all this massive marketing pull, and without him, do Visa even come in? Do Cash App come in? Do they get the sponsors they've had, RB, this year? Probably not. So, you know, that of course is a value for Ricciardo, but equally Red Bull have a lot of value from Perez as well. So is there much reason to put Ricciardo in the car over Perez? Has Ricciardo proven that he'll do a better job alongside Max than Perez will? You know, you can argue it, but it's not exactly guaranteed. So very much intrigued to your predictions in the comments below, because the rumour is that Lawson's definitely getting the drive at RB for next year. That means Ricciardo definitely isn't getting the drive at RB next year. one of two options. Either Ricciardo is joining Red Bull instead of Perez, which may happen now or in a few rounds' time or at the end of the season for next year, or Ricciardo is out and he's forced out and he's not going to be getting a drive elsewhere. So, the conclusion is one of Perez or Ricciardo are going to be gone, and that may happen after Singapore because there's a 3-week break, of course. If there is a time to make a driver change, that is potentially the time to do so, and, Lawson may be in after Singapore is a possibility as well. So there's a few interesting moving parts on this, but intrigued to your thoughts in the comments. Unfortunately for Ricciardo, if he was to go and get to drive the RB20, I'm not sure he'd be a massive fan of it, because clearly the car is struggling at the moment, and honestly, nothing has been more indicative of that lately than what they confirmed last night. So over the last couple of seasons, Red Bull have done numerous special liveries. This, I think, was like the Miami one they did a while ago, and there's a few other ones they did last year towards the end of the season. Special, like, fan-designed liveries, effectively, and look, it's pretty cool stuff. They do it, and obviously we see other teams do their special liveries as well. I actually think special liveries are cool, but I think there's arguably too many of them, to be honest, right? I'd like it to be dulled down somewhat, like even when McLaren did like the special Senna livery. Look, it's good to commemorate Senna. People would argue maybe that goes a bit too far sometimes, but look, the theory is from Red Bull, they can't do this because every gram matters. And this is like something that you don't say unless you really are in a tricky spot, isn't it? Because they have worked for months now on these fan design liveries, working with all the respective partners, and, to make this happen. They did it last year, and they've now confirmed that when they came to the testing phase of what some of these designs would look like in real life, we found the paint used to create these bespoke full car takeover liveries added unforeseen and undue weight to the bodywork of the RB20, which is interesting because is it really unforeseen and undue just because you know that if you do a paint job, it's going to add a few kilograms. It always does. You're talking maybe like 2, 3, maybe even more, but, a handful of kilograms in just pure paint weight added to the car to make this happen. And it's always been a thing, and this is why we see many of the cars nowadays are, largely carbon fiber, because the teams don't want to add any more paint than they absolutely have to. So, look, they say it's too heavy for us to do, but it's not like this is a surprise, right? I mean, people are going to put their liveries in, they're going to require paint, and they're going to add a few kilograms to the weight of the car. So the problem is they can't afford any extra grammage on their car, which is kind of incredible, right? Because the RB20, last year the RB19, it wouldn't care. Who cares, right? Last year's RB19, put any livery on it, add extra kilograms, whatever. The car so good it doesn't matter. This year, they have decided that, over all of these factors, performance is so important, they cannot afford to compromise it. And everyone knows that a livery adds weight. But the fact that they say, as I'm sure you can imagine, any additional weight compromises performance, and the team are continuing to prioritize making this car as competitive as possible for the remainder of the 2024 season. As a result, it's with a heavy heart we must let you know the team has made the decision to not run the liveries on the Singapore and the US Grand Prix. So, all the special liveries that were potentially designed and they were going to be coming through, the last 2 of the planned fan liveries, are being cancelled and axed because of concerns around performance loss, which is fair and justified, but it's not something that would be done for a team that's in a particularly promising position, right? And we know that they've just lost the lead of the Constructors' Championship. Red Bull still saying, we're fighting for the win, we're going to win it. I mean, let's be real, right now, the risk for Red Bull is slipping to third, right? I mean, it doesn't seem very likely at all they're going to be able to catch up to McLaren, but, they could feasibly lose third here, or lose seconds to Ferrari, given that that's not a massive points delta, and, of course, Leclerc is making up points, as potentially was Sainz on Perez until the instant on the run down to turn 4. And, of course, over the last few rounds, it's been the 2, obviously, McLaren boys that have scored the most points. Piastri, though, ahead of Norris, which of course is, concerning for Lando, given where he is trying to be in terms of winning this championship. But, he's actually the 3rd most points scored over the last few rounds. Verstappen is still in 4th, but not an especially impressive 4th at 58 points over the last 4 rounds, or the last 5 rounds, sorry. These are the top 4 scorers over those last 5 rounds. And it's evident that Red Bull are struggling and they need seemingly every gram they can get because, Red Bull see a world where at the end of this season, the championship is decided by just a few points. I think they realise probably the Constructors is gone. The drivers, is probably going to be quite close. And as I've said before, and I'll probably say again, the most likely outcome, it seems right now, is a marginal Verstappen win, where Norris closes the gap, but not quite enough. And there are then questions after the season on whether they should have taken different decisions earlier in the season, such as, let's say, in Hungary. But, you know, that's a topic for another day. Red Bull clearly feel like, though, let's say Max finishes P5 in Singapore, and with the livery, he might finish P6 in qualifying or the race or whatever. Those few points may well be critical at the end of the year. And, you know, this is one of those decisions that still shows that Red Bull, on some level, are a championship entity, right? Like, they are completely committed as much as is possible to winning this championship, and fair enough. But at the same time, you wouldn't do this if your car wasn't so on a knife edge that, you know, they're wondering, what if we add an extra few kilograms to the car? Is it going to perform even worse, right? What do the simulations say about that? These other factors they don't want to worry about, and fair play, but equally not a good look, right, for the team as it stands going into what has historically been a rather tricky Grand Prix for them. Just before we close out the video, another couple of words from Mohammed Ben Sulayem, obviously controversial character for multiple reasons, and we know that recently he wasn't happy, or the FIA weren't happy about drivers swearing on the radio, and Max was like, I'm going to say what I want, and first of all, you guys don't even have to publish my radio. You don't have to send it to the broadcast, so what are you doing? So, Ben Sulayem's point was, and this is kind of reminiscent of when Hamilton walked over the track, right, in Qatar last year, and he got fined 50 Gs for it, and basically what they said was, well, Hamilton's a role model, and therefore he shouldn't be doing this because it's, you know, bad for the kids and all this. And that's fair, but equally, it was kind of strange because they were kind of saying Hamilton's a role model rather than like every driver is a role model. You know what I mean? So that was a talking point at the time. And now they're saying, well, drivers, you know, Yuki, Max, whatever, don't swear because, as Ben Sulayem says, we are not rappers. There is a difference between our sport, motorsport, and rap music. We aren't rappers. How many times a minute do they use the F word? That doesn't happen that often with us, but that's them and we are us. So, okay, and then he goes on to say that I was a driver myself in the heat of the battle, tempers can flare, so he gets it, you know, I'm angry in those moments too. We have to keep behaving as responsible people where everything is broadcast and recorded live, because let's say, you know, you're at home with your children watching a race and the driver starts using foul language, how will your children react? What does your sport teach them? So, okay, like on some level I get it, but equally, what are you going to do? Like, are we serious right now? We're going to try and police drivers' language mid-race? I mean, that's an absurd suggestion, especially when, as the question was then, all right, how about if Formula One just don't broadcast those words being said or bleep them out more than they do, which they already do anyway. But, you know, interesting. Then he says, we can and we do tell them to do that. We are also the ones who gave permission to broadcast more radios, but there are rules, and those rules are there for the good of the sport, and those rules must be adhered to. So, hang on a second, what's going on? So, on one hand, he says, we've got to stop them from swearing, and on the other hand, he's like, well, we could and we do ask the broadcasters to not broadcast them so much, but, well, there are rules in place that allow them to do what they want, so it is what it is. I don't see how you can complain about one thing and then say, well, the rules are there, so it is what it is. On the other hand, it's like, I don't know, it seems kind of performative to me, but intrigued to your thoughts in the comments. And just one final thing to mention, the Singapore Grand Prix usually throws up some drama, right? Safety cars, you guys know how it goes. And, well, this weekend, there is a possibility of rain. It's looking like thunderstorms over the next few days. There's a chance of rain on Friday, a greater chance of rain on Saturday and Sunday. So assuming we get some wet weather, that could be, as it has been in the past, rather dramatic for the night race in Singapore. But very much intrigued to your thoughts on all of this stuff in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.